Texas was dealt a massive blow. Freezing cold led to increased power usage, power outages, food shortages, and general panic. An unexpected event caused a situation for millions of people. But if history is any guide, people will simply go back to business as usual when this is all over. No additional preparedness, no extra supplies, simply a continuing dependence on a fragile system. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. The reason I'm covering this, number one, is because I was asked by my subscribers. A couple people had mentioned in the comments they wanted me to talk about it, but I want to take it from a different angle. Obviously, you've seen what's going on in the news. If you're in Texas, if you were affected by this, please let me know. We need to know the information for those who do not live in this area or places that have been affected by this. I want to cover this specifically because of what I just mentioned. The fact that individuals, they're dealing with no power in their homes. You see it all the time. Maybe it's a blackout in your city and it lasts for a day or two or three. And the people always say, I'm going to get a generator. I'm going to get some extra food. This is going to happen. It's going to happen. A week goes by, 2 weeks go by. They forget all about it. The same situation happens in different countries, different cities, different places, and yet the effect is always the same. We get caught up with the daily events, we forget about it. Another point I wanted to make here is that what we're looking at here in this particular case, you've got people who should be always taking the time not to put money into their 401k, but to have that preparedness in mind. Wouldn't it be a lot better to have some sort of solution on some level instead of having a few extra shares of Amazon? I think that would be really something that's so important, and yet people don't talk about that. That's why when you look at the Money GPS strategy, people who look at it from the outside, they're saying, look at this guy. He's not telling me to buy this particular stock or that particular stock. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I'm taking a holistic approach. I'm looking at this from the top down. And it's only those who have spent the time with me, and by the way, about 40% of the people had already dropped off. These individuals know what's going on, because you can't just say, well, I'm fully diversified because I own a 60-40 split of stocks and bonds. No. My goodness, it's so much more detailed than that. If you want to know more, of course, not just my books, but look at the free info I have in my playlists here on the channel. I'm going to get into this right away. So I'm not going to cover all the details in these articles, obviously. I think you know what's happening, but I just want to cover basically what had occurred. Want to show you the steps that are involved in this. Texas frozen, wind power, outages ensue, electricity now at unheard of $9,000 per megawatt hour. This is truly mind-boggling. I mean, I thought it was just one or two examples, but I was seeing this everywhere. So it is a fact. For a period of time, the price skyrocketed. It was unbelievable. And right here, we're seeing now dead wind turbines. I don't know what the situation is as they thaw out, how long that kind of thing would take. But in the meantime, we've got issues. There's clearly no doubt about it. And that wind power, just something that, you don't necessarily need to worry about in Texas, suddenly becomes a big problem. I also saw wind power being something, in Germany, they spent all this money in wind power and then it's freezing cold. It's not really doing them any good, is it? All right. Wind generation ranks as the second largest source of energy in Texas, accounting for 23% of the state power supplies last year, behind natural gas, which represented 45%. So I've got some charts to show you on that. They mentioned the fact, the prices, even during the high times, $100 per megawatt hour, and in this case 9,000, and I'll show you examples of even further than that. At the same time, the freezing temperatures were driving electricity demand to record levels. ERCOT reported, while calling on consumers and businesses to reduce their electricity use as much as possible. right here saying we're dealing with higher than normal generation outages due to frozen wind turbines and limited natural gas supplies. I have charts to show you that relate to both of this, by the way. We are asking Texans to take some simple, safe steps to lower their energy use during this time. Wind power essentially disappeared overnight, and you can see that right here in the chart. I've got a few that break it down essentially, but you can just take a look at how this dropped significantly, and that's obviously going to be an issue for those who are really relying on this. In case there was any question, natural gas made up for wind. Might be hard to detect in the chart, but this gray area, essentially, as you had the wind turbines going offline, then natural gas, it actually picked up some of the slack. It goes a little further in the next one I'll show you, but I just wanted to quote, 40% of Texas energy production shifted from wind to natural gas. Natural gas saved the day until it too failed. And that's something that, of course, number one, I think it's important for people to be able to have their own energy supply somehow, a basic amount, whether that's some battery storage, whether that's solar panels, whether that's a generator, diesel generator, something. If you can have multiple levels, great. That doesn't mean that you're going to be able to live off of that for an extended period of time, but some emergency level energy is going to be so important. And people, like I said, they think, oh, you know what, I'm buying a diesel generator. I'm buying a diesel generator. It's going to cost me $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, whatever, depending on the type and the size and so on. And then they look at it and think to themselves, well, you know what, I'm not going to do that. They spend their money elsewhere. I think that it's so important, and it should be doing, I personally, this is me, I think I would rather have my investments to be something that prepares me for the worst conditions rather than trying to simply attain capital appreciation. Why? Why do you care about your Amazon shares, all 7 of your shares, if you don't have power, if you're freezing, if you have to boil your water, if you're going out in the bread lines to try and get something because the store shelves are empty? To me, that makes a whole lot of sense, but I get criticized every day. Channel plateaued. People are leaving by the tens every day. Wind was the biggest failure this week in the Texas grid catastrophe, and natural gas was the best option. I also think it's important to note the fact that you want to have more than one type of energy. If you can, if that's possible in the place that you live, that city or that town or that state or whatever it might be, if they can provide multiple types of energy, that's fantastic, because there's always an issue. There always can be an issue. So you on an individual level should be prepared as much as possible. But the place that's providing you that power, that would be great if they had multiple levels. This just shows you what was going on February 15th, the prices. So the darker the red, essentially, that would be the more increased pricing. And it's just unbelievable to see how far this had skyrocketed. And, take a look. It's red all throughout. The prices were just unbelievable. Nobody could pay for this. And then you forward a little further, February 20th, and you could see that clearly those prices definitely have come down. Power trip. Furious Texas homeowners hit with eye-watering electricity bills up to $17,000 due to high demand during freeze. Now, the state or the federal government might come in, bail them all out. We'll see what happens. But I think it's important to note that it might affect you in a different way. So you might have power, but suddenly that power spikes up and your bill is something you can't afford. This is what people are saying. We'll see what the government does as a result. The electricity shortage brought in to encompass food, water, and health crises. And that's really all I wanted to highlight here is the fact that you could have one simple issue, but it snowballs or it dominoes into others. How much longer will the Dallas-Fort Worth area store shelves be nearly empty following winter storms? People are asking these questions because of the supply chain. They need their food, they need their water, they need their supplies, and they're relying on the stores to provide it. And most people, they are just doing what they have to do. Their 9-to-5 jobs, if they have one, they're going around living life, and they expect when they go to the grocery store that all of their favorite items are there. And yet you go in and some of the most important things that you need are gone. What does that do? Of course, massive disruptions. This is not a third world country. This is Houston, Texas. I spotted a line of people filling up buckets of water from a spigot at Hayden Park. Why? Millions either have no water or are under a boil water advisory. This just shows you how serious things got. Bread lines in Southwest Austin, only 15 items per person. I don't know all of this. It might be such a limited area, but I have seen a lot of different reports. So if you know of anything that would make this true or not true or whatever, definitely post it in the comments. We need to share this information. We need to be able to validate it. Just crippling Texans devastated by icy storm are now hunting empty shelves for food and water. This happens everywhere. Anytime you ever have a disruption, power outages, anytime you ever have the, whatever, hurricane, whatever it might be, people immediately, they rush to the store, they beat each other up in so many cases, the stores start restricting products and so on. I think it's important that we all pay attention to this and use this as a good example to make sure that we are prepared in advance. If you had a generator and never, ever, ever needed to use it, wouldn't that be fantastic? I mean, it's crazy the way that people see things. So you buy storable food and you keep it in the basement and 25 years later it expires. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that fantastic? People would say, oh, what a waste of money. That's completely the wrong mentality to have. I want to make, I think it's 3 points right here that connect this all and finish off the video. The death of fiscal austerity has major implications for markets. And this is just showing you that governments will do whatever it takes to spend and spend money. But when it comes to the infrastructure, they don't do that. They don't spend where it actually counts. No, they go out there and spend money on the most I've showed you the government waste reports. Instead of putting it where it's actually useful to the people in that city, state, province, country, no, they ship it overseas. They spend it domestically on the most ridiculous things, and it's just truly sad because certain things could be prevented if the money was actually going to the right place. Bubble warnings go unheeded as everyone is a buyer in stocks. And then this, Canadians take on mortgage debt at the fastest pace in a decade. So what I'm trying to highlight right here is that the individual are willing to put their money into a bigger home, a nicer car, 7 shares of Amazon, whatever the case may be. But instead, they're not getting the generator, they're not getting the solar panels, they're not getting the batteries, they're not getting the storable food, they're not getting the batteries of all kinds, in fact, the flashlights, all of the preparedness, the medical kits, you know what I'm saying? They don't want to spend that. Well, that's kind of a waste of money. Oh, that's too expensive. Oh, this and that. But they'll go out there and they'll spend in something that makes them look cool. They'll get something that's capital appreciation, whatever that might be, where they think, well, I'm going to make so much money on this and that, instead of getting the things that actually will help them out in a worst case scenario. And that worst case scenario tends to happen more often than we would ever like. So that's my message for today. If you found this video informative, hit that thumbs up button. If you have any points you want to make, if you want to have some preparedness tips, if you want to share, please do so in the comments. Don't sit silent. This is an extremely important topic. If you want to learn about e-commerce, you can do so at the AmazonGPS.com. If you want to learn about the financial system, top to bottom, I got everything in here. In my newer book, definitely there's some other preparedness factors in there, and but the two books fit into each other like a lock and key. So definitely check them both out at the link in the description. And if you haven't seen this video yet, you absolutely must check it out. Click it, and I'll see you there.